And there we are, live and in person. Good morning. How
Hi.
are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk to you today. Since this is live, can you introduce yourself and tell us kind of what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, my name is Shiloh Miner, and I'm a love and marriage coach for women whose husbands don't want to go to therapy. So, if you love your husband, you're like, he's a good guy, but like, I can't get through to him. He won't listen. We can't communicate. My needs are not being met, but he won't like come to the table essentially. I help you break through some of those boundaries and those barriers by working with you to create a new dynamic in your relationship.
Awesome. I like that. I like that a lot. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Ryan. I'm a men's success and relationship coach. Uh, I help men who essentially don't want to go to therapy, and coaching is a different solution because, and we can talk about that later, the differences between therapy and counseling and what coaching offers, because I think they are very nuanced and they work very differently. So I take the other side that Shiloh doesn't take, and I try to bring men back into the relationship who don't want to go to therapy, but they want the help, need the help. So you talked a little bit about boundaries. How do you see boundaries, or how do you work on boundaries with the women that you work with?
This is such a good question because it's such a huge question that I think people come at from a lot of different angles, and the way you approach it will make or break your relationship, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you come and you take generic advice that says you got to hit them with your boundaries. This is my boundary. It's a wall. You can't cross it. Don't you dare. You're going to create so much distance in your relationship that even if he respects that boundary, there's going to be no emotional connection. There's going to be no avenue for him to now connect with your heart.
Hmm.
So when I think about boundaries with women, it's an escalation of boundaries. Like you don't go straight to the hard boundary of like, I won't tolerate this thing. Because in an ideal scenario, your man will be honoring your heart, right? He'll
Yeah.
care how you feel. He won't be responding to your hard lines. That's not the kind of relationship you want or he wants
Yeah.
because you don't feel like he cares about how you feel unless you hit him over the head with it, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is to share how you feel about things. It's not a boundary,
Yeah.
really. It's just an expression of I don't like that or I like this.
Yeah.
I feel good when this happens. I feel bad when that happens. I feel good when you talk to me this way. I don't feel good when you talk to me this way. And this can be really challenging for women to do because it's very vulnerable.
Hmm.
You're not making demands. It's not even a request. It's just a pure statement of you and your identity and how you are. And part of the reason this is hard is because what the foundation of healthy boundaries is self-worth.
Yeah.
You have to know on a deep cellular level that you're worthy of the treatment you desire. Otherwise, you'll hedge on expressing because you'll think, am I asking too much? Or you'll make some story in your head about how he can't really do that. He's not really that kind of guy. You'll kind of psychologize him to the point where you don't ask for anything. And so level one is pure expression of preferences, of desires, of dislikes, and of emotions. And it sounds so basic, but most women don't do this at all.
Yeah. And I think men and women stop
Hmm.
doing this very early on.
That's right.
And I mean, it's one of the things in my workbook, though I don't mention it as boundary setting, but I get them on the page of, hey, this is what my likes are, this is what my dislikes are, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I desire, because it gets them to talk about that in a way that isn't confrontational. It isn't in conflict. It isn't saying you can't do this. Rather, it says, this is what I really dislike. This is what I really like, I'm really into. And it kind of, again, I'm really big into gamifying things for men because it makes it easier to express yourself in that way.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, and you're right that we stopped doing it very early on. That's like a dating conversation.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like as soon as you hook this person, you think you're not allowed to change and you're not allowed to express anything different because you signed up for this or whatever. And one of the biggest things I harp on, like especially in like my social milieu where people don't really know, is I'm like, people need to renegotiate their marriage many times,
Yeah.
at least when kids happen, at least when kids are somewhere teenage, at least when kids leave the house, any changes of jobs, any changes of roles, any health status changes, like you are evolving and changing. And if you don't give yourself permission to want different stuff or not like what you said you were going to like, your marriage will die. Like it
Yeah.
will end at that first phase, maybe the kids or like, just very early on. And so giving yourself permission to do that again requires a very high level of self-worth. And it also requires that you trust this person not to reject or abandon you, because otherwise you'll just try to please them by not rocking the boat, by not saying what you don't like, by just being like, well, they won't like it. They won't like it if I say that. So I'm not going to say it. And again, if you do these preferences and you share that, a man who loves you is going to naturally incorporate that into his approach. He's going
Mhm.
to be like, oh, she likes this kind of thing, doesn't like that kind of thing. And I heard her tell me about it in a non accusatory way that had nothing to do with me screwing up in that moment. She was just
Yeah.
sharing stuff, just expressing casually all the time. And so now I'm going to create a life that works better for her. But if we don't do that, we literally give him nothing to work with. Like
Yeah.
there's no information. And so he goes and does things, and we're like, oh, you didn't consider me. And why would you do it that way? He didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. He has no clue.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before, and that's when people start shutting down. And I like that you brought that up. As we go through, and in the literature, they're called turning points in relationships. So when you move in together, when you get married, when you buy a house, when you change careers, when you have a kid, the first time you have sex, all these things are turning points in the relationship, which require a new form, kind of a self identity. How do I self identify in this? Right. When you move in, what does that mean? What has changed in your role? What has changed in your independence? What has changed in life during that time? Right. When you get a new career, what does that look like? When a kid's born, what does that mean? It means, and I tell these guys, now you're a father, your priorities have shifted. Like you have this new identity that you need to figure out what it is, what it looks like, which means you have to figure out what type of father you want to be, and those things align. But at the same time, right, you're still a husband. So you need to balance these two things out. What type of husband do you want to be to your wife while you're being a father? Like, it
Mhm.
adds layers that, and when you get into this stuff, right, when we're talking about likes, dislikes, passions, and desires, we're talking about, as a father, what are some of the things that I enjoy now doing? Because the things you enjoy doing are going to be different.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy doing things with my kid or for my kid. They're going to be centered around your child. What are some things you dislike doing with the kid? Right. I want to create this space for this child now as a father. These are the things I'm not going to tolerate. So yeah, those conversations have to be had on a consistent basis throughout the relationship. And it's not really a renegotiation, but something you said is, which was interesting, this soft to hard boundary. Like, what's an example of a soft to a hard boundary?
So you might have a man who speaks to you like in a way you don't like. Like maybe
Okay.
he's dismissive, he's catching a tone with you all the time. And you said like, I don't like to be spoken to that way.
Yeah.
Right. And you said it a few times and you said it calm. And maybe you've also had to sit down where you said, I want to share with you something's really important to me. There's some ways that you sometimes speak to me. You might not notice it, but it doesn't feel good for me.
Yeah.
So that's your like real open, trusting boundary, right? Now, if he does not take action on that, and if he ignores your boundary over and over again, then you escalate it. So it might be like, hey, I'm feeling this way a lot. I don't like feeling this way. When I feel that way, I'm gonna leave the room.
Okay.
And the minute he starts it, you leave the room and you stop talking. So once if you've expressed a lot and it hasn't landed, more words won't make it better. More words will probably make it worse, because now you're in this fighty energy. Like, one of the things that I really try to help women understand is that shutting up and putting up and fighting are the same woman.
Yeah.
She's not taking action to change the situation. She's just bickering, or she's like snapping back, right? You think you're standing up for yourself, you're not. You're perpetuating the same cycle. So you don't say, I told you not to talk to me that way.
Yeah.
You don't do that. You go, I noticed this thing is still happening and I really don't like it. So every time it happens, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna leave the room. And you just leave the room, and you just are absolutely consistently committed to not allowing that energy into your body. And that's where the boundary is. It's like, there are certain things that I know don't feel good in my body. And
Yeah.
that's enough reason for me to make sure I'm not in that energy,
Yeah.
And what I think women don't realize is they think, well, why is he going to care if I leave the room? He'll care. He'll care.
He will.
He'll care. Because a lot of men who have, this is my opinion, you can tell me if it resonates with your work, who have bad habits. Like, they're snippy, they're rude, they're kind of like, their communication skills are not that great. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean they don't want you around. What they're doing, though, is making you not want to be around.
Yeah.
And when they experience your absence, now they have a reason to reflect. Now they have a reason to go, my wife keeps leaving the room. I hate that. I'm in the middle of talking about something, right?
Yeah.
And then what I say is that when you keep your side of the street clean, like you didn't bark back, you didn't attack, now he can't blame you.
Mhm.
If you do some bad stuff back, he can put it on you. Well, you're always fighting, you're always bickering. But if you're just this person self-possessed going, I'm gonna leave the room, and you just keep doing it, it creates a lot of space for him to like look at himself, which I think is a really powerful thing.
Okay. Because I kind of teach men the same thing, but on their end, I have to teach them emotional control. And I think we talked about this last time we went live. A lot of men have a hard time with emotional control. They think everything is anger. A lot of them throw temper tantrums. Like you're saying, they get snippy. You have to be able to stay calm in the moment, search for a way to understand what's happening and not react. Rather, you want to learn how to respond. And so, one of the things, and I don't know if you do this, I do tell them, if things get out of control, I need you to step back and say, hey, I need to step out of the room, and give them a specified amount of time, because otherwise people just don't come back to it and that conflict stays present, which is never good. So, like, give her a time frame. Hey, I need to step away from this for 10 minutes. Let's chill, and I'll be back in 10 minutes to resume this conversation, or a half hour, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point when you come back to where there's no end. It's not open-ended.
Right, right.
And to me,
No,
that's
I
important for men.
it's really important. Like, it's interesting because I know there's women who avoid conflict, but
Yeah.
my clients are not the avoiders. So
Okay.
my clients are always like, he's walking away and not coming back, or he's like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And then there's never a right now. Like, the common complaint is like, there's never a good time to talk to him. He's
Yeah.
always got a reason why now is not the time. So definitely from our perspective, it's like, if he says, hey, I'm getting upset here, I'm flooded, I'm going to come back, we're like, great. Knowing you come back is like an instant soother,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise we're going, this is going to be the same old pattern where now I got to chase you around for another week trying to find the right time to ask you a question. So that's really powerful. And you're right, I didn't even get into the emotional regulation, but you cannot set boundaries effectively unless you're emotionally regulated,
Yeah.
right? So she's going to be triggered, she's going to want to bark back, she's or shut down and not do anything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
basically, this freeze or fight for most women, and fawn, right?
Yeah.
Some women will try to please the man and say nice things to him and make it better, which always makes it worse. Do not try to fawn on a aggravated man. I just want to PSA to all the women, he is going to become more aggravated and you're going to wear all of it. Like, just either back away, or don't engage, because when someone's treating you the way you don't want to be treated, you don't want to feed into them. You want to go,
No.
oh, this is a situation that I don't want to engage in. That's
Yeah.
my self-respect. But yeah, we do inner child work, because so much of what I see is that women who are powerful and confident and amazing in the world next to their husband feel like little children. They feel
Okay.
like they can't speak up. They feel like they're always fighting with them. They feel like they're never heard. And they're going, why am I so disempowered in this arena when
Yeah.
I know how to stand up for myself and I have all this courage elsewhere? And I say, that's your inner child. You're not operating from an adult place. That's why you don't feel like you can do anything. That's why it feels impossible and you feel totally overwhelmed and you feel scared that he won't like it. Because as a child, if you displease your parents, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, you're stuck. You literally don't have a choice of what to do in that situation.
Yeah.
And so we do, before I even ask them to talk to their husbands, before I even challenge them to speak up, we spend a lot of time creating intimacy with that child in them who is really having a panic attack a
Uh-huh.
lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like by the time they come to me, they're in this really agitated, like, oh, I can't stand this situation anymore. And just that alone, having that recognition that there's these two parts of them and they can like take care of their child and then speak from like a wise woman place, it totally changes the communication. It makes them capable of, being cool when they set a boundary and not taking everything personally, right?
How do you, with women,
Hmm.
how do you get them to come to the table and have that conversation when they themselves are overwhelmed? Because with men, right, they always, I'm telling them, like, there's never a right time.
Right.
Like, the right time is right now. Um, Most often, like, you don't want to wait for, there's a caveat to it. And I don't know if this is the same with women, but so she's pulling away emotionally, whatever the case may be. Conflict is there. She's not
Mhm.
talking. And then all of a sudden things start to get better. That's not when you want to bring this stuff up, is when things are getting better, because that's going to put it into a new cycle. And she has kind of dealt with it on herself, maybe stuffed it. But at the same time, when you do that, you're going to create more conflict instead of addressing it in the middle or right at the time when you can share these things. Like, it's also how you share it, and I'll get into that in a second, the way I teach men to do that.
Mhm.
But addressing it with her so that you can decrease the amount of time that you're in this conflictual state, because a
Um,
lot of men feel like they're in this conflict for so long, when if they went to her and they had the tools to communicate, like, you, you never want to tell a woman, hey, we need to talk. That's instant. Like, I'm amplifying the conflict by doing that. More so, you want to say, hey, I'm feeling this way about the situation. uh, you want to put it on you and in I statements, because most of the time it's because she doesn't feel understood, and that's where a lot of the conflict comes from. So is that kind of where the women are sitting too?
um, Really interesting because as you're talking about that, I'm kind of mirroring in my head the woman's arc, and you're absolutely right that a man needs to address it as fast as humanly possible,
Yeah.
as fast as he can, because men do this waited out thing that women loathe. We loathe it because we see it as cowardice, right? We see it as avoidance. We see it as he's not, we see it as abandonment. I have to self soothe now. I have to stuff it or get over it because this man over here doesn't want to face it,
Uh-huh.
right? And so we get, the longer you stretch that out, men, the more resentment we build, because the longer we have had to hold our emotions and not have a safe place to release them with you, the more we resent that, the more we feel like we're not supported, like we're alone, like we don't have a true partner in this relationship. Like we have, like if we get the impression that we have more emotional strength and resiliency than you do, that's a real burn. Like we feel like, what for then, right? What for if I don't have somebody I can lean on while I'm upset, and he has to wait until I'm calm to talk to me, until I have done all my processing.
Yeah.
Now, from the women's side, it's quite different actually.
Okay.
It's quite different. I don't see those arcs with men. Like, what I say is you can change your relationship on a dime with a man
Hmm.
because he doesn't remember. And this sounds weird, but my experience is men are so in the moment with you that like you could have all this crappy stuff in the back. I mean, I've heard examples of this where men hold big resentment, but it's not very common. You could have all this history where it wasn't good, But
Okay.
if you turn to your man and smile at him and welcome him, open your heart, give him this big energetic embrace, listen to him, behave as though the relationship is great, he will be like, the relationship's great. We're better. Hallelujah. We don't got to talk about it. We don't have a fight. Like, it's just, men are so beautifully in the moment with you
Hmm.
that like, women will resent it because they won't remember how they hurt you, or they won't remember how bad it was, or they won't like think it was so bad back then. And you're like, that was bad then.
Yeah.
Um, I got to give this example because it blew my mind. So my husband and I used to have these huge fights, like
Uh-huh.
the worst, right? And one time I actually like drove out the driveway, which I'd never done, but I was so triggered and it just was like chaos, right? And years later, when we're great, I made some comment about, do you remember that time when I like actually drove out the house? And he's like, no, that didn't happen. I was like, you don't remember? Like, that was such an epic, terrible thing for me. I will never forget it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But for him, it was so epic and terrible. He's not going to try and remember that. He's like,
Uh-huh.
that was no, no thanks. Right. And so with my clients, I can't believe it. It's like 2, 3 weeks and they're golden because women are the epicenter of the emotional quality of the relationship. And
Yeah.
men are judging the quality of the relationship based on your energy and the face you give them and the smile you give them, how physically and emotionally open you are to them.
Yeah.
So when you choose to be physically and emotionally open, while also, standing up for yourself and getting your needs met and not just, fawning and doing it for him, but making this self-responsible choice to be like, I want to feel in love. I don't want to carry my resentment. I'm not going to punish him with my emotions. I'm not going to use these tactics because they don't work. They're not getting my needs met. Like this thing about women staying mad for so long, women do that because they think if I drop this thing, he's going to think everything's fine
Yeah.
because he will, right?
Will.
He will think everything's fine. So women will actually hold on to their resentment, hold on to their anger, because otherwise they don't know how to get their needs met, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't work, but it's the only strategy they know to like be like, no, this thing really matters to me. My feelings really matter. And so with my clients, what's kind of cool is we choose to be open, choose to be warm, choose to be welcoming, and also soothe all our baggage and all our stuff because he can't fix that. It's already over. Like women want men to go in and fix the past, and they can't. Like it happened,
Yeah.
right? It'd be
Yeah.
nice if they apologized, but it still wouldn't fix it. And women have had men apologize and been like, but I'm still mad. And it's like, yeah, because that's inside of you. He can't clear out that resentment for you. That's
Yeah.
your internal work. You grieve, you make a choice. Am I going to divorce this person? Am I sick of him? Or if I'm going to stay, why don't I be happy? Why don't I choose to forgive myself and forgive him and start fresh? And so you get this clean slate energy with also new skills to stand up for yourself. And the relationship just takes a whole new character
Uh-huh.
almost instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting you use the word emotional punishment because that is exactly what it feels like to these men as they're being
Yeah.
emotionally punished. I did a video like it it wreaks havoc on their confidence because it is going on for so long. Maybe I'll pull it up and figure out what this one person commented on it, but over time their confidence takes such a hit because it is emotional punishment to them because they're kind of out of it, but it's because they don't know how to ask. And when they do, right? Like I said, if you say we need to talk, she has shut down. She's not going to discuss it with you because one, you're not showing any emotional control. Two, you're not showing any amount of understanding or empathetic communication, which she is searching for in that moment. Right? She wants to be heard. She wants her needs to be met, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And getting them to think both ways and that's why the emotional control is so important with men because men aren't supposed to be that emotional and they think that by being snippy and being angry is emotional control when it's not.
No.
It's the complete
No.
opposite when you throw a tantrum like that. Like you said, she sees that as a weakness because of the tantrum.
Yeah.
She is
And
carrying the
yeah.
burden of this emotional relational toll, if you
And
will.
especially because of motherhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers have to regulate, like we learn in conscious parenting, which a lot of women are doing now, that for your children to be safe, you have to be emotionally, you have to have the capacity to regulate your emotions. So your kids are triggering you, they're acting out, they're being kids, and you have this emotional labor you do where you're like, I got to figure out how to calm myself down. I got to figure out how to not yell at my kids. I have to work on myself. And so then when your man comes along and also shows emotional immaturity, you're like, you are acting like a kid right now, probably his inner child, right? But we judge that, like, sounds terrible. We judge that really harshly. We
Mm-hmm.
probably judge that the harshest when we see a man not regulating his emotions. And it doesn't have to be a big stomping throwing fit. It can just be the passive aggressive comments and like, oh, isn't anybody gonna turn off the lights in here? Like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
We're just like, what is this? Like, I already have children. And I think that's another reason why children are this huge, like you said, turning point,
Yeah.
because women are laboring to mature themselves like really hard because children will force you out of your immaturity in the rudest way, right? And so then we become hyper aware of where our husband has not done his
Mm.
maturing work. Or we might have been fine with it when we were both immature. We're like, oh, we're both immature. We can't even see it. That's just who we are now.
Yeah. And that kind of brings me to kind of around to the next one. Like, what are some non-negotiable boundaries? Because to me, it would be that self-work. It would be that
Yeah.
emotional control. It would be when I talk about non-negotiable boundaries in a relationship, it's showing up the best version of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. That is
Mm-hmm.
a strong one, right? Because
Right.
the only person that can do that is you. They can't help you show up emotionally. They can't help you show up physically or mentally. That's on you, and that's a boundary.
Mhm.
And to me, I said it yesterday or Wednesday, boundaries are parameters with which the relationship resides in that you both agree upon.
Mm.
And it's not them step it's not telling them what they can't do. It's saying you have free will to do what you want, but if you do it, this is my response to it. So
Yeah.
it's a regulation of my emotions and my response to the boundary.
Right. I'm hearing some different conceptions of boundaries, so I'm not sure my mind would fit. It sounds like for you, it's the creation of the relationship container. Like this is our container where we're only doing these things. Like you said, it's agreed upon boundaries.
They're they're
Whereas
parent they're
I don't
parent
think that mine are agreed upon.
they're oh, yours aren't agreed upon. Like mine,
No.
they're discussed. When men
Mm,
talk about boundaries, they're
yeah.
things that are discussed like I'm going to show up the best version of myself,
Hmm.
right? I expect you to show up the best version of yourself. That would be a parameter that the relationship resides
Right.
within.
Yeah.
It's not saying you can't. What did we talk about the other day?
I get
It
what you're
was
saying. He's not going to police it. He's not going to
you're
force
not
you or
no,
coerce you or anything. But
no.
okay, so what I see what you're saying, I would call that standards. I have kind of a conception in my head of boundaries, standards, and desires.
Okay.
And so for me, boundaries are the stuff that doesn't exist in your relationship. Like it's already a boundary. Like if you have never had cheating in your relationship, that's a boundary. Nobody has crossed it. It's
Yeah.
like a rock solid edge.
Okay.
Nobody has done it. Nobody does it. If hitting has never happened, if cheating has never happened, those are boundaries that implicitly you have actually agreed upon because nobody has actually ever crossed them. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And then your standards, in my conception, is like the status quo of your relationship. Like this is how it usually is. This is how we talk to each other. This is how we treat ourselves. And they're usually implicit unless you have a conscious relationship. It just happens, right? And then the desires are the things that you're kind of wishing would happen, but you haven't gotten there. You haven't figured out how to get there. And so what I focus on for my clients is whatever's going on in your relationship, you have committed to that as a standard.
Yeah.
If you want something better, you have to level up so that your desires become your standards. And that's like not even an agreement. That's just you committing to what your desire is, standing for it, standing in it because you're healed, because you're worthy. And then, like we talked about, I think last time, then your man will probably come up to that standard
Yeah.
and be like, oh, yeah, this actually feels better. I feel better about myself. And and so, showing up physically, mentally, emotionally, yes, all of that. But and I with men, it's funny because I used to coach men, and it was always like working out is the first advice for men, right? It's like work out. If you're
Yeah.
not working out, nothing else is going to work. Just like get in the gym now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And with women, it's so different. With women, it's um, are you attending to your own emotions, right?
Hmm.
Because our fundamental need is to be attended to, right? Like, are you listening? Are you hearing? Are you validating me?
Yeah.
Now, if we cannot do that for ourselves, we will not even have the capacity to receive it. We won't be able to create a relationship where that happens
Okay.
because it's a foreign experience to us. We actually don't know what it's like, and we actually don't know how to interact in a relationship where that happens. Like it's just out of the realm, right?
Okay.
It's a desire category, but we've never experienced it. So that's why we do so much inner child work. Is the first thing with women's are, if your husband is treating you in some kind of way that you don't like, ask yourself if you're not treating yourself that exact way, ignoring your own needs, invalidating your own emotions, and putting yourself last.
Yeah.
So until you take ownership of like, I don't even want to make time for myself. I don't even put my priorities as a high thing. I even tell myself I'm making a big deal out of things and I should just get over it. You're
Yeah.
projecting that out into your world and then being surprised your husband treats you exactly the way you treat yourself. So
Yeah.
I would say if you want him to treat you a certain way, you need to set the example.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of woman who treats myself like this, and then he'll get a template for it. Oh, this is how this woman is treated. I've seen her do
Yeah.
it every day, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more you say that, when you say this, I have boundaries, I have standards.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all housed in the parameters of the relationship.
Right.
So I'm putting it all into the context of the relationship.
Got it.
Is all of it discussed?
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't sit down and say, I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to eat healthy because I want to be with you for so long. Like that's just
Right.
an implied, right? Like
Right.
you said, it's
Mm-hmm.
implied, like, and it's showing up in the relationship saying, I'm
Yeah.
here for the long haul.
Yeah.
You got somebody that's drinking a lot, smoking, their health is declining. You know, you're going to be taking care of that person, wiping their ass in the future. And that is not
Yeah.
a pleasant thought because
No.
they've done it to themselves. It's
Yeah.
not something that's naturally occurred. So yeah, that's an implied thing that you just an implied thing.
It's like you're communicating with your actions. Like that's
Yeah,
where I feel like we're saying the same thing. It's like instead of talking about everything, show up.
yeah,
Like vote with your feet. Prove that you mean it
yeah,
by actually doing it. And this is where I feel like the before I learned my method, I felt like so much of the things I read was so verbal. It was overly verbal. Let's talk it out and talk it out. And it just people talk their relationships to death all the time when you could take action
yeah,
and do something that would speak so much louder than like a big lecture about it.
yeah. But I mean, I see that. That's hard for me. I mean, my
Yeah.
PhD is in interpersonal communication.
Yeah.
So stepping
Tell me.
out, like I see the
Yeah.
action because it
Yeah.
is how you show up each and every day. Like
Right.
when I coach men, it is like get your ass to the gym, let's get you going. You're going to be eating better, but you also are going to be showing up this different version of yourself every single day. Um, what type of man do you want to be? Do you want to be driven, kind, generous? That's how
Mhm.
you need to show up in the world. Little things like putting your cart away at the store. Are you that type of person? Or are you the type that leaves it in a parking spot?
Right.
Those are two very different people. And it
Mm,
says a lot about the person in
right.
their day-to-day interactions.
Right.
Holding the
No,
door for somebody. There's little things
yeah.
that
And
make a
it
huge
changes it
impact.
changes you and it gives you more self-respect
Mm-hmm.
and it gains you more respect from your partner because you have more self-respect. And
Yeah.
like from the women's perspective, it always comes to how do you treat yourself. It's like, do you want to be the woman who, wears jogging pants for the rest of her life because now she's a mom? Is
Yeah.
that how you saw your life going down? Right?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Oh no, but I have to." It's like you don't have to do anything. You can be whatever kind of woman you want to be. You got like 60 years, 50 years left, right? And so yeah, it's it's so important for everybody listening to really hang on to the fact that you can do whatever you want. You can be that person.
Yeah.
And that when you be that person, your partner will benefit immensely from you being that person. So huge.
It is. And I like that you put it that way. Your partner's going to benefit from you being that person, because that is, I mean, your wife is going to benefit from you controlling your emotions, learning to communicate in a way that's from an understanding point of view, um, from an affectionate stance. It's going to benefit you. There's no downfall to becoming a better person and showing up. There's really not.
No, no, there's not. There's not. It's really powerful. And it creates a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So you talked a little bit about showing up. What happens when showing up isn't enough?
Hmm. Um,
Is that
so
when like
but
conversations have to be had, or what does
yeah,
that look like?
you do want to have conversations. I think the reason that you maximize it and I minimize it is because women talk too much and men don't talk enough.
Okay.
Typically, right? Like
Yeah.
we are more verbally skilled from a young age, right? We're
Mhm.
ready to have the
Yeah.
conversation now, most of the time. And men are ready to wait to have the conversation indefinitely. And so, like, yeah, those basic communication skills, like we talked about last time, is so important for men to get really good at that. And it's such a benefit to the woman he's with because she really wants to talk. She really wants to be able to communicate without it triggering you and be able to go a bit deeper and have a dialogue that goes back and forth. And for women, it's what I focus on is quality over quantity, right? Because women will use a lot of words and not affect him with those words. There was too many, right? And
Hmm.
he's getting lost in the story and maybe in the emotional content, right? Like I say men have a word limit, like Twitter, but it's only for emotional content because you can talk about anything else all day and night, right? Your interest matters or something you specialize in, right? But when your wife is coming with you intensely with an emotional heightened energy,
Hmm.
now you have less bandwidth. Now you're like, okay, what's coming at me? And so for women, I work from the inside out, right? Because if you are still resentful, if you're still blaming, if you're still punishing with your emotions, you don't need to talk yet. It's going to make it worse. You're going to be venomous. You're going to be undermining him, even if you can use the right words, because women are really good at covering by, I only said this, but if your energy is you're the problem, you never change, you never listen to me, you don't even care about me, if that's what you're thinking in your head when you sit down for a conversation, it doesn't matter what you say. Like he's going to feel the
Yeah.
presence of this attack and of this judgment and of this rejection. Um, and women don't realize that men are sensitive to our energy because we think, oh, he doesn't pick up on stuff. He doesn't get hints. He must be like a rhinoceros over there. Like he doesn't notice. And yet men have this hypersensitivity to the degree of which I guess I'd put it from rejection to like approval scale,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Does she approve of me and think I'm the best in the world? Does she think I'm the biggest loser ever who like always screws up? And I
Yeah.
know where I am on that spectrum instinctually.
Yeah.
I just like feel it in my bones and I don't know what to do about it. It makes me stressed if it's low, right? If it's high, I think great. Life is wonderful. I have energy to do things. So what I really try to emphasize to women is that we have this powerful influence over the men in our lives and that we need to not take that lightly and
Yeah.
that we can bring out the absolute best in him or the absolute worst in him. Not that that's our responsibility, what he does, but
Yeah.
if we want to take ownership over the type of influence we have, it comes from our energy,
Yeah.
not like serving and cooking and cleaning and, trying to be a hardworking wife. It's like if you can understand that your gift to your husband is this approval, acceptance, loyalty, having his back, trusting him,
Hmm.
all of a sudden he's going to show up different. It'll be much easier. All your communication will get easier.
Yeah.
You'll be able to just have those conversations because you cleared away the drama, the internal drama about it.
Yeah. And I think part of that, like you said, is women afraid to trigger him. And I think that trigger comes from how he's responded in the past.
Yep.
He has, right, it's been brought up, and he hasn't been able to control his emotions effectively. He has snipped
Mhm.
at her.
Yep.
He might have done something as small as, oh, here's the problem, I have the solution, which means he's shut her completely down in any conversation that's being had, because it's not about getting to the solution all the time. It's about giving her a space to communicate what's going on so that she can come to the solution.
Yeah, and so she doesn't feel alone in it. Like if
Yeah.
I have, and I've seen so many different ways men can get this wrong. So say something happens bad, like you got a big bill or your car, some problem with your car,
Uh-huh.
and you need your husband to know about it. You don't need a solution, but he's got to know, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets mad. And he's not mad at you, but he's mad about the thing. Like he gets activated, like, oh God, this thing happened. Blah.
Yeah.
Women don't want that. We don't want to tell you ever again. We will change the oil ourselves if you're going to do that. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I've
Yeah.
heard men say how they actually feel really betrayed when women don't tell them. Like, don't tell them about problems, don't ask for their advice. Like, they just like ask a friend or like their brother or something, you know? They're like, I don't want to talk to my husband. But that's because when you come with an activated response, it's so taxing to us that we're just like, oh my God, like now I've got to tell him that, you know, there's a big credit card bill and or we've got to talk about the car breaking down and he's going to be all fussy and it's like you weren't even attacking her. You weren't even shutting her down. But
Yeah.
just having that tantrum of some kind, it's exhausting to us. It's exhausting. So you're right. Like there's so many different ways that men don't they miss the opportunity to be there for their wives
Yeah.
because we just want you to be a calm, connected presence in that moment. Hey, tell me what happened. Okay, that sucks. Here's what I think we can do. Do you need any help with that? Easy. Like, but it's again, it's the energy. And I've communicating this is so tricky because energy is something people don't are not in contact with unless they've done some work. But a man who's connected to his heart and he's grounded is like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I can feel that he loves me. He's looking me in the eye. He's got a nice tone of voice and he's not panicking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Having that presence can either be a medication. For having the emotional presence from a man's perspective will either be the medication to a relationship, a medication to her, or it's going to be a disease.
Mm,
Because when you're consistently blowing up, like you said, it starts to affect everything.
yeah.
How she perceives him, how she
Yeah.
comes to him with stuff, if she comes to him with stuff. Um, and it just tumbles down. It becomes this disease that goes throughout the relationship.
It becomes everything. And again, so many of my clients have been like, my husband's a good man. Like he's honest and like I know this, but he is so angry. I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
Like I can't stand being around him. And they'll cry and be like, I hate to say this, but like I'd rather not be in his presence because it's always anger about anything. And the men are thinking, I've done never did anything bad to her. Like
Yeah.
I'm a good husband because I never did anything bad to her,
Yeah.
right? But we don't want to be in your presence if it's angry. And yeah, it tears everything down. It tears absolutely everything down if you can't manage, process, handle your emotions as a man.
And I think that's why, where you work with women from the inside out, I work with
Mhm.
men from the outside in,
Yeah,
because that is where it starts.
yeah,
With, I mean,
that makes
working on
sense.
yourself is, there's so much to it. But if you don't even have the discipline to work on your own health, I can't expect you to have the discipline then to think about how you're emotionally showing up for your wife, if that makes sense from a
No,
man's
that
perspective.
totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And what I tell women is that men speak action. Like if you want to get a man's attention, do something.
Yeah.
Like that's why you leave the room instead of having a fight about how he talks to you. Like when you actually do something, that's a clear message. And so, yeah, I think that physical from the outside in with a man makes so much sense. He's got to go through the layers in a sense to get down there. Whereas
Hmm.
women live in our hearts.
Yeah.
Like this is where it starts for us. It's where it starts and where it ends. And so that's why when men don't understand that or like think it's just one aspect of who we are, how we feel, or
Yeah.
how we feel about him, or our emotional state. They think it's just one factor. We're like, no, this is the factor.
Yeah.
When our emotional state is good and when we feel loved and safe, everything else flourishes. There's an overflow. It's wonderful. But when it's not, oh God, like we're just in hell. We cannot deal with you or with anything because we're feeling this hole in our hearts.
Is it an overwhelm that women get into?
We feel crushed.
Crushed?
It's a weight. It's like a
Okay.
heavy exhaustion. Like it's like now I have to do these things. I have to regulate for my kids. I have to work. I have to clean, but I'm like dragging lead in my shoes. That's kind of how it feels like the life
What are
force
women
energy is drawn out of us.
so what are women wanting from men in that sense? Because I would tell men like this is your chance to show up for her. This is your chance to be there, be present, and do the things that you've been working on.
Yeah.
Be
No, I mean,
emotionally regulated, help out where you can,
yeah.
like be
Yeah.
present in the relationship.
That's it. It's a sense of isolation predominantly, right? Like he
Mhm.
doesn't notice how I feel, he doesn't care how I feel. We're disconnected and he doesn't help me, right? So the help is kind of on top of noticing all the other things, right? Like some men
Uh,
will try to go straight to help, but if she doesn't feel heard, it's not going to have the same impact. You have to start with I can see that you're not okay.
yeah.
Like women would bawl their eyes out. All my clients would bawl their eyes out and feel like their man had become Jesus if he went to them and said, "Hon, I can see you're not okay.
Okay.
I notice. I can see it. What is it? I'm here. I'm listening." And she'd be like, "Oh my God, he saw me finally. He
Yeah.
cared that I'm like this ghost of a woman." Right? Because women can't understand that men don't do that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to teach men to do that
Yeah.
because
It's really, really easy and powerful. And you know, it's funny because I say the same thing to women. I say the things we try to do for each other, we think it's so hard, right? Like, what do women want? Why are men so whatever? And it's like you're just not turning the right lever.
uh-huh.
You're over here working really hard to please stuff he doesn't care about. And a man is working really hard over here to do stuff for women when all he has to do is look her in the eye and say, "Man, I can see you're struggling. Let me
Yeah.
give you a hug. Tell me about that."
Yeah.
And we would be like, "Oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you." Like, and not even know where to start. Might not even tell you, might just cry for half an hour and then feel better because you noticed. And
Mhm.
really, like, I know that that's not natural for men, but it's actually very easy. You don't have to labor. You don't have to make more money. You don't have to work longer hours. You don't have to do all the chores. You just have to learn this skill of like being present for the emotions.
Yeah, that's the toughest one for these guys is being present for the moment, the emotion,
Mhm.
because there's no gray area there. You're either going to be present and be there and support her, or you're going to shut it completely down to where she never does this again. And then we're going to have to start back over and try to figure out how we can rebuild it. And I think
So
that's
I would love to hear why it's so hard. I think that women would love to hear that.
why it's so hard for men to do that.
Yeah.
Most men, it's a fixing thing. It's like you're doing this. I don't know how to fix this emotion. I don't, there's no fix to your wife crying and being emotional. There's no fix you can do.
Mhm.
And men go from problem to solution. The solution to them isn't clear until you make it clear. I just need you to listen. I need you to try to understand where I'm coming from. I need you to be there for me. That's the fix. So if you can get a man to understand that that's the solution to it,
Mhm.
and also how that solution operates, right? I'm going to ask you when she says something, just you don't say it's okay.
Right.
That's not the response to it because
Right.
you have to teach these men, tell me a little bit more about where this is coming from.
Yeah.
What brought this on? Where do you see this going in the future?
Hmm.
What what sparked this in you right now? Because there's something else usually going on. It's
Right.
not the one thing she's telling you about.
No.
but you have to listen with intent and respond with intent to get to what she's actually doing. And women are really, really good at doing this. Men are really, really bad at doing this
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
men just want a quick fix. They don't have it. They don't understand that you need to listen. So you have to give them, you have to teach them. You have to teach them how to ask an open-ended question. Is That's one of the most
Hmm.
basic things I do is,
Hmm.
this is what a closed-ended question is. This is how you're going to close her up. There's what an open-ended question is. Here's how you're going to understand her a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I like what you said about tell him what the fix is. I always say, give the man the key to win.
Yeah.
So he knows that he can win in this situation because you've told him what it is.
Yeah.
It would feel really good if you just held me right now.
Yeah.
I would love it if in this conversation I felt like you understood what I was talking about. That's what I need.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work. You got to try it again because if someone's learning something new, you don't expect it to work the first time every time. And that's a big lesson women need to learn and we need our emotional resiliency for, because if something doesn't work once, we might never try it again. I've
Yeah.
talked to women who have complaints that are 30 years old.
Jeez.
Something happened 30 years ago. He called her a bitch or something awful that she was shocked, horrified by. And she was like, oh, close that door. Not safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really detrimental when you don't try again as women, when you think, oh, I already experienced that hurt once. I'm not doing it twice.
Yeah. Getting men to do that is difficult. Granted, I work with men who typically they've hit a rock bottom in their relationship where this is a last resort. A lot of these men, they're just going through thinking, everything is all right. This is just, I'm a guy, right? It's that I'm a guy. This is how I act, blah, blah, blah. It's a very fixed mindset.
Yes. I've
Very,
noticed that men have a very fixed mindset. They love to say it's just who I am.
yeah. Yeah. It's just who I am. There's no
Yeah.
growth involved.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to teach them how to have these conversations from an understanding point. I don't need you to fix me. I don't need you to fix the situation. I need you to listen. And this is what I mean by listening.
Hmm.
You have to
Hmm.
teach them active listening
Right.
in a roundabout way because they're not going to listen.
Right. You can't go at it directly, right? That's what I talked
They
about
want it
last time. You got
directly.
to come from the side a little bit as a woman,
Yeah.
because if there's too much confrontation, it brings up all the resistance.
Oh,
But
I have a quick one for you
sure,
from
I got a
Sean.
couple of minutes.
What do I do if my wife won't allow me to discipline her son?
Tricky blended family question. I'd love to know how old the son is, um,
He
and how
looks
long you've been the step parent. Those things. How positive is your relationship with that son?
also
But any
what does discipline
time,
look
go ahead.
like?
Yeah, what does discipline look like? Very good point. Have you discussed with your wife what your discipline strategies
Yeah.
are that you've agreed upon, especially in a blended family? Everything has to be explicit. Everything. You can't come in and go, this is discipline, and my wife doesn't believe in discipline. That all needs to be defined, that needs to be agreed upon, or it can absolutely destroy your relationship. Parenting
Mhm.
styles destroy first families, but they always destroy blended families. You can't be fighting for your own territory and not making an agreement on discipline. But I think what I would recommend when a man is coming in and trying to provide something that a woman is rejecting, right? I'm trying to do something good for her. I'm trying to get this boy into line. Maybe he's a teenager, maybe he's a bit reckless, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to help her and she's saying, F off, don't do it. That's when you need to come in with your intent and tell her what your whole thing is. Hey, I've noticed that he's disrespectful. I notice he doesn't clean, he doesn't support the household. And I don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing him doing that to you, and I don't want him to grow up this way.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you what my approach would be, and I want to get your feedback because he's your kid. You know him better than me.
Yeah.
What would really impact him, and what do you think would backfire, and how can we be a team on this? Because if you get her on board to your approach, it might work.
Yeah.
If you don't, it will backfire because they're going to become an alliance, and you're going to be the odd man out, and it's going to be bad for everyone, really. Because I mean, my instinct is this kid probably needs some discipline, but it's got to be done in a more teammate way.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
You have to be on the, it's her child.
Right.
There is a bond there that is very, very delicate, meaning if you overstep your bounds in the slightest, you are going to have a monstrosity of a problem in your relationship. So you do have to approach it in the way you said, talk to her, express to her how you see disciplining, what she sees, and approach it as a team. Right? She has to allow you the space to run the household. You have to allow her the space to be your teammate in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things are not easy and they can take a long time to negotiate. So the key for you as a man will be to go slow, to go
Yes.
fast. If you try to ram this through and get something and make your point, you'll just set yourself back 10 years. So go very, very slow and give her time to process and make sure she trusts your intent and understands your intent deeply because women care about your intent. They'll
Yeah.
say we don't, but usually it's because we don't know what it is. You
Yeah.
haven't told us.
Yeah.
But like I'm often helping women overcome the resentments of their husband's fathering style by expressing men are trying to make sure this person can survive in the real world. Men are
Mm.
looking at the long term. They actually care about them. It might look more harsh to you, but they do have this loving intent. And
Yeah.
even just knowing that helps us to take your perspective because we're not bad at perspective taking when we're giving some information on it, right? We'll be like,
Mhm.
okay, I can see where you're coming from. You want the best for this kid. You're not just dysregulated. You're not just being selfish and wanting things your way. Then maybe she can come to the table and hear you more.
And then comes back to emotional control because it takes a lot of emotional control as a man to discipline a child. Those men who, without any emotional control, it's a very, very weak sign. And it's harm. Women are going to take, you're going to harm my child because you can't even control your emotions. It's a
Yeah.
security, it's a safety thing.
Yeah, that's right. If some big man who's not my kid's dad is emotionally dysregulated near him, a woman is going to, mama bear is going to be stepping in between every time
Yeah.
because we'll be like, what is this large mammal doing in here? Back
Uh-huh.
off, right?
Yeah.
You've got to show that you're very in control of yourself and that you're not. Yeah, because there's a big difference between reacting to perceived disrespect by a child in a puffed up way, you're becoming dominant to that child,
Yeah.
to taking a very mature, grounded route of like, okay, I got to teach this kid the ropes and I'm going
Yeah.
to do this in a loving way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would agree with that too. Thanks for taking that.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. I don't want to take
Okay.
you over like I did last time. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate having you. I love our conversations, and maybe we'll get together in another couple weeks and do another one.
Cool. That sounds great. And to anybody watching, please ask us questions. I'm happy to answer anything specific, whether you're a man or a woman. I like doing this stuff with Ryan, especially because it's hard for us to take each other's perspectives. It's hard to realize how different what's going on in men and women's minds are. And I love furthering that conversation of mutual understanding.
Yeah, it was really good. I liked my favorite part was seeing your viewpoint on boundaries and what they were, the hierarchical nature of them instead of the longitudinal like I have.
Right.
So that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Those differing perspectives they're eye-opening and it helps me help these guys. So I hope I can give you some insights to help these women help their guys.
It really does. It really always helps me to recognize that these are new skills for your husband,
Mhm.
almost invariably. The things you're asking for, he has not been taught, and you have to teach him in a roundabout way by
Yeah.
your standards and your requests and your desires, and that
Yeah.
is what I teach women to do. And men can learn, especially when they feel approved of,
Yeah.
when they feel like they're welcome here, and it's not a judgment. It's really cool to see how much that changes the willingness of him to come to the table.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So thank you, Shiloh. Appreciate it.
All right.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Thank you.
And live. And we're gone. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks. I appreciate that. That was good.
Yeah, me too. It was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get together Send me a message in a couple weeks and we'll schedule another one.
Sure.
And
That sounds good.
if you
That
have
works
some
for me.
ideas pop up, we can include those and
I'll
talk
do
about them, and
that.
I'll do the same.
Sure. Yeah, I think it'll be really good. No, I find it really good to open the perspective and just different approaches and how you have a framework that you teach your clients and I have a framework and it kind of just seeing that shows how different we are on top of it, right? Like you
Yeah.
need a totally different framework to connect with your clients than I do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I have to come at it from a very, very different perspective,
Yeah.
because
Right.
if I try to do the inner work there, I can't even get guys to do a journal. When I say journal, they take it in their head as, oh my God, this guy wants me to write a diary every day.
Yeah.
Like, man, get out of
Like
yourself for a second.
men are the champions of blowing it up out of
Yeah.
proportion, hey? When you say like, "Hey, I'd like you to do this every day now. I have to do this thing." You're like, "I didn't say that." Yeah. No. No, women are I'm so like doing the work has made me in awe of women's flexibility because women can go from totally resentful to doing inner work to opening up in a couple weeks, like if they choose to. Women do have incredible like this kind of flow within them, which is the opposite of this like fixed mindset that men have of like this is you who I am. Like I think because of women's natures, we have an awareness that we can change. We're like I could change if I chose to, right? Where I think the kind of solidity or some kind of concrete nature of masculinity is like this is all it is. This is the end of the story. Like that's
Yeah.
just me. And
Yeah.
women are like that's not how people work. Like because we feel so much more malleable. We're like I could figure this out. I could
Do you have
probably.
women that emotionally distance themselves?
Yeah,
What do you
completely.
tell them to do? Because for my guys, I'm like,
Yeah,
that's when it's you need to sit down and have the conversation, and it needs to
yeah,
be had in this way, because there is something deeper happening that she's not telling you.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you need to get
So
to
what
what's,
happens with me is that I work with the deeper thing she's not telling him.
oh, okay.
So then she's able to come back to the table, right? Because he
Yeah.
can't hear it yet. He's not
Yeah.
really going to be able to support her through it. So, like, yeah, I just had a client yesterday, married for 36 years. Husband rants and raves all day. She can't stand it anymore. And she never really said anything because it was so threatening to her.
Oh.
She hadn't been able to tell him how damaging it was.
Uh-huh.
And she did it, and he heard her because she just had been distancing. She'd been like, I'm just going to live my own life and we'll just cohabitate and maybe that'll be fine because she was afraid to approach him. But my clients are also like on their last leg where they're like, if this doesn't improve, I got to leave. And I don't want to. I don't want to be divorced and go through all of that. And so they do also have that pressure of like, I got to face something and try something different
I
because
want
what
to,
I'm doing is not working.
when you were saying that, I was do you have to go real quick?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Um, because you're working with women whose guys won't go to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm working with the guys. It's
Mhm.
not that they don't want to go to therapy, but they're on their
Mhm.
last leg in the relationship and they don't know where else to turn.
Right.
So there has to be, and I don't know if you could think about this, and maybe we can talk about it next time. We're, the guys in your women's relationships are different than the guys that I'm working with.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Because they're
that's
they're guys who ask for help.
yeah. So
Right.
I don't know if I don't know where that connection is, if we brought both of me working from the outside in, you working from the inside
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's something there. There has to be something that
Yeah.
will work to get those guys on board
Right.
for your
It's
women. Not
it's
not
really it's really tricky because I've noticed the same thing when I talk to any men's coaches. It's like the men they're dealing with are not the same characters that my clients are married to because they
no.
would not go to a coach,
No.
like categorically not going. And so any man who, even though he's masculine, has his resistance, who is willing to reach out, invest money and time in a coach, he's the initiator in that relationship.
Yeah.
He's the one in greater emotional pain. Like the person in greater emotional pain shows up to get help,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think, the men who my clients are with are more emotionally shut down.
Yeah.
Things are not good, but they're just better at avoiding that. And like, they're quite stoic, kind of avoidant types. And the women eventually are like, I got to do something about this. So they show up, right?
There has to be a way to reverse engineer each of our programs that will work
What do you mean?
So there has to be a way for, like, because your women, your wives are trying to get their men on board. There has to be a way to reverse engineer what I'm doing to put it into the context to get their guys on board.
Mm.
Where it's not
You mean how to
like
motivate them, like
how to,
through the
yeah, so
woman?
it's a motivator. Similarly, I
Yeah.
should be able to take what you're doing, give it to
Hmm.
my guys, and be like, this is how you can get your wife more on board, because right now I have them talking, I have them working on themselves, because it really is, I work reinvigorating themselves, then we work on communication, then we move into intimacy and connection,
Hmm.
then we move on to continued growth. So it is,
Hmm.
you can see how it's outside in, and I'm sure yours would be a little bit backwards from that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So it's two different, it's like if my clients and your clients got together, they'd be the perfect match.
Right. Right, exactly. They would be not attracted to each other. But
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, pretty much, right? And
yeah,
people are gonna be like, "Oh, he's getting working on his
yeah,
emotions. Like this is so great." And like, I
yeah,
wish that my husband would do that. And then your clients would be like, "Oh, this woman's like opening up and she's like dealing with her emotions. I wish
yeah,
my wife would do that."
yeah,
Yeah, I see a lot of that, and I've thought often what you've said, like, why can't we like, kind of tag team or something like that? And every time I've tried to do that, that other party is extremely resistant because
uh-huh,
they're that person in the relationship. They're like, I don't need to work on anything. I'm fine. That's
yeah,
kind of their outlook on life, right?
yeah,
I don't got a problem. You got the problem. You go whatever, do your thing, but I don't got a
yeah.
problem.
And that's a very man thing to do in the relationship. Everything's fine, I don't know what to do. Whereas like the guys I work with, they're coming on, they every, I would say 80% of my sales call there is tears, them just breaking
Are
down.
their wives leaving them?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always at that
Yeah.
point, like
Yeah.
divorce is on the table, they're separated.
Yeah.
There's big emotions and big feelings, like this is their
Yeah.
last ditch effort.
Yeah, they're absolutely in crisis. And you've probably read Terrence Real. I don't want to talk about it. You read that book?
Uh-uh.
So good. Oh, you'll love it. Oh my God, Terrence Real. I don't want to talk about it. He's like a therapist, coach guy. Works with men a lot, and his thing is men need crisis. They don't change until there's crisis. Because I was always
Yeah.
lamenting this. Why don't men ever do anything before there's a crisis? Come on. And he was just like, that's how men work. And it really helped me to just like accept that. Like that's how it works. There's
Uh-huh.
got to be a crisis, or
Yeah.
we're not gonna waste resources on figuring something out that's not a problem yet.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I see is hard for you is that when women are out the door, they've got a lot of pent up resentment. Like it's been going on for a long, and
Yeah.
so sometimes women even get their ego invested to that point of like, oh, now you're changing. Like, why didn't you do it before when I said stuff? And like really resistant. Even if he does change, they'll be like, no. But I think most of the time, women are just looking for the things you said, right? And if
Hmm.
they get it, they're like, well, yeah, that's what I wanted. It's
Yeah.
that simple, right? You
Yeah.
can you can do it.
Yeah. It's
I
just
think,
getting the guys to show up a better version of themselves, because
yeah,
that's what drove her away. They were showing up
right.
really shitty every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if anything, what like how I could support the wives in your group or vice versa, it would have to be tailored to that type of person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the messaging and the approach I have is for women who take action before they leave,
Yeah.
women who believe that and they can change and they have a certain level of respect for their husbands. But if I was to be talking to a woman who has her foot out the door and her husband is starting to change, it would be, yeah, different. I would have to contemplate that because it'd be something around like, how do you know his changes are real,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right? Or I like, or is it worth it to reinvest when your husband is now, getting help or going to therapy, and why would it be worth it to you and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
There's a different way of thinking about it, because they're very, very different people, types of people.
Yes, they are different types of people and they're different stages too,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right? Did we talk last time about attachment styles? That's what I was going to ask you about. I
No,
think you made a comment on my thing about attachment styles. Are you into attachment styles?
a little bit. I see the
Yeah.
benefit of it, but
Hmm.
I'm also hesitant with it, because I see it as a failure to grow as an adult. Like these are attachment styles are nothing more than survival mechanisms in childhood. So
Right.
why are you holding on to that in adulthood when it no longer serves you? You don't need that to survive anymore. And
Right.
it's pretty easy to become securely attached. I'm not going to say
Right.
it's super easy,
Right.
but it's fairly easy. Like
It's doable. Yeah.
that's all you're teaching women to do essentially is become
Yes.
securely attached. And that's all I'm
Exactly.
teaching men to do is become
Yeah.
securely attached.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I took a deep dive into it for a while, and I don't like the way people label and make it stick, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm anxious. And, but the reason I bring it up is that the avoidant types don't get help. So if you have someone who's an avoidant attachment, they're the hardest nuts to crack
Yeah.
because their whole survival is avoiding. And so it's really hard for them to come to the table. Like, yeah, they could heal and become secure, but it's the anxious attachment styles who are usually more willing
Yeah.
and able to become secure because, connection is what soothes them. Avoidant
And
people are
those
like,
are the
oh,
people.
connection, scary.
Yeah, and those are the people that are attracted to each other. That's
Exactly.
the hard part.
So that's why I'm wondering if like maybe the guys you're with are more anxiously attached.
Yeah, I would say they are.
Yeah. And so are mine, right? That's as a rule.
Because I would say the guys that are in those relationships are yeah, they're avoidantly attached. I wouldn't say they're securely attached.
No, no. Yeah, I mean, if you're securely attached, you generally don't run into so many problems in your relationship to begin with, right?
No.
You don't end up in in that position. Um, yeah. I think the attachment style thing has been helpful for me because like more men are avoidant, right, than women, and more women are anxious. And
Mm-hmm.
so you see those patterns play out in the like man who doesn't want to go to therapy, doesn't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
whatever, because it's almost just like an exacerbation of like masculine immaturity, I suppose, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
like typically masculine coping mechanisms would be more on the avoidance side, typically immature feminine coping mechanisms more on the anxious side. So
Yeah.
then, like for you, you're like bringing men more into this like masculine security,
Yeah.
right? And out of like that childhood acting out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And for me too, it's like women are afraid of displeasing their husbands. And so they don't show up with any kind
Yeah.
of power, any kind of clarity about what they want because they're like, oh, I get really scared when he's mad, right? I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, and trying to get an anxiously, I guess if you want to label it the anxious attached man to talk to an avoidant attached woman, getting her to open up. That's why I have to be so direct with the communications, the boundaries, because getting her to open up is going to take a lot of understanding and it's going to take a lot of emotional control because an avoidant attached woman, the second you let your emotions get out of control, she is shut down
Yeah.
because that's what she's used to is that chaotic, that
Yeah.
inability to control your emotions, that
Yeah.
safety.
I could see an avoidant woman being very difficult. And some of my clients, uh, they present avoidant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they have been so shut down
Yeah.
and so out for so long that they're very independent and they're like very successful and, kind of like, I'm fine. I don't need a lot, I
Yeah.
don't ask for things. But
Yeah.
underneath it is that panic of, I just don't want him to be mean and,
Yeah. And
stuff
that's
like
where you
that.
have to ask, that's where I have to get the guys to ask the questions to
Yeah.
get deeper because it's never with those women, it's never the surface thing that they're talking about. They
No, because they're not in touch with themselves.
No, they've pushed it off. Well, I'm stressed at work. No, you're not. Like there's something else going on and we need to figure out what it is.
Yes.
And you have to be a strong enough guy to be like, listen, I I'm coming to you. I can see something is
Mhm.
not right. I can feel it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. I want to
Yeah.
get to the root level of this. You told me it was this, but I can still feel something else is going on.
Right. Yeah, no, that sounds really good. I could see it would eventually create enough safety for her to
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm gonna admit what's really going on with me because you've been safe for long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But you also have to build that safety in because you've been unsafe for so long.
Yes,
Or you
exactly.
went,
She's got a template for you now,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to prove that that's not true anymore, which
Yeah.
Same thing with for women, right? Like if we've been criticizing and kind of after our husbands for a long time. But no, it's actually not the same because men get over it so fast. Like that's what's so funny. Like if you're
Mhm.
safe, and maybe it's because men's fundamental need is not safety like it's women's, right?
Yeah.
Like men are have more security in their bodies. So as soon as you become a safe woman, he's safe too.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
oh great, we're safe now.
Yeah.
And it can happen like on a dime because that's where he operates in the world. And it's a real gift, right? In that way, that it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's not as much baggage holding and
Yeah.
fear that will happen again. Like I think because women are what I call prey animals, like we're smaller, we
Yeah.
got to track everything. We got to make sure that we don't get screwed over and that the person we're with is safe. And we got to keep tabs on our environment. We got to keep tabs on the men, and like that makes us very our memory so incredibly like a trap, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're the bigger person, you're not going to die if your wife gets mad at you. She's not going to
No.
hit you and kill you.
No.
Like
No.
those primal reactions don't have to happen for you.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's what I think's going on anyways, because people are always trying to chalk it up to societal conditioning. And I'm like, man, we're smaller. We've been in danger since our whole evolution.
Yeah.
It has a huge impact.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, that's why evolutionary psychology is the reason women are typically the last ones to fall in love, but the first ones to fall out of love, is because there's so
Mm,
much cost associated with being
right.
in a relationship, the toll it has on your body, having kids, the amount of time, like there's a huge amount of cost in a
Right.
relationship for a woman, whereas a man, the cost is very low.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. I was speaking with a client recently, and I have this kind of joke. I say it's better that he's mad at you than you're mad at him,
Yeah.
because he'll still have sex with you. Right? It won't
Yeah.
wreck the relationship if he's kind of annoyed with something you did, but if you're mad at him, it will wreck the relationship, right? And
Hmm.
because I'm trying to get her to stand up in these ways, and her husband can be kind of pouty and weird about it, right?
Yeah.
And I said, he's not going to leave you. Like, that, right?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, he won't. And I said, most men are not going to leave us. She's like,
No.
but why? And I said, we have higher sexual market value. They know it.
Yeah.
And she was like, because we're still afraid of men leaving us with our primal brain, like, I'll die in the woods with my kids,
Yeah.
whatever. And so then we don't speak up. But once women see, like, so many of these men are very loyal, like, they're not actually going anywhere. They might get irritated, they might show some frustration when you change the rules of the relationship. But like, there's actually a lot of latitude women have, like, to show up as themselves
Yeah.
once they know they can, right? Like they can
Yeah.
do what makes them happy or create a lifestyle that works for them or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to show up who you are, who you want to be, and who you want to be in that relationship,
Right.
man or
And
woman.
and women show up as placating as a rule. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, they
how can
can.
I how can I not piss off this person? And then they totally lose contact
Yeah.
with what they want because they're just like, well, I don't know if that will not upset my husband,
Yeah.
so I'll just not
Yeah.
do it. I won't
Yeah.
even think about what I want because it might upset him, and I don't want to upset him. So, and it's not conscious, right? They would never think they're that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
beholden to their husband's feelings, but that's why we blame you. So this is something I should go soon. But when women say they're not happy about something, men will often say they feel controlled, right? Like, why is she controlling me and telling me how, like, she won't be happy unless I do this thing? And we're like, I'm not controlling you. I'm just not happy, right? Like, I just don't like this. Well, because you want us to be happy so much, right? Like, I need you to be happy or I'm going
Yeah.
to feel shitty, right? And women are the same way where we feel controlled by men's anger. If he's going to be upset about it, I can't do it. But
Yeah.
you can still do it. He can be upset,
Yeah.
but we'll think, no, he's controlling me with his anger. I can't do it. Can't do the thing because he'll be mad, right?
Well, yeah. It's in the way the woman says it to the man, in the way
Right.
he takes it.
Right.
And it's also in the way the guy reacts to what was said and how she takes it. The
That's
control
right.
is in talking and reacting.
Right.
Men
Right.
react, and that's how they control.
Yeah.
Women talk, and that's how they control.
That's interesting. Yeah, we're always trying to get our way somehow and making it messy, right?
It's all messy. It's humans. It's relationships. It's super
Right.
messy.
It's,
All
all
right.
right.
Well,
Well,
do you want me to send you this recording? Do you want it?
sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah, I have your email. Okay.
Perfect.
I'll download it and send it to you in an email.
Thank you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
We'll see ya.
Take care.
You too. Bye.